It is 3 a.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in Bangkok, and 4 on a Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gan-young. You're watching Arirang, Korea's only global network. The Sewol-ho ferry disaster has rocked public confidence in the Korean government and raised critical questions about just how safe we are as we go about our daily lives. President Park Geun-hye pledged wide-ranging reforms in a televised address on Monday to ensure a similar tragedy never happens again. And the government has already begun the process of making sure the president's words become reality. Arirang News Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The government wasted no time initiating follow-up measures to President Park Geun-hye's package of remedies to ensure another disaster like the Sewol-ho ferry accident does not happen in the future. As her address wrapped Monday, officials led by Presidential Chief of Staff Ki-choon broke President Park's remedies into 5 main sectors and 27 measures in total. The main sectors are the restructuring of government, reforming how government officials are appointed, proposing a special law to the National Assembly authorizing the establishment of a fact-finding committee into the ferry disaster, the establishment of a national safety ministry, and the establishment of a monument and a People's Safety Day on April 16th, the day of the ferry disaster. President Park singled out corruption as the main factor undermining the country's safety standards, saying it created an atmosphere where the ferry could sink and take so many lives with it.
공직 유관단체 기관장과 감사직에는 공무원을 임명하지 않을 것입니다. 퇴직 공직자의 취업 제한 대상 기관 수를 지금보다 3배 이상 대폭 확대하겠습니다.
Prime Minister Chung Eung-won called for all-out efforts Tuesday to revamp the country's safety management system and root out corruption among public officials. A large number of state-run organizations are headed by retired public employees that have worked in firms and organizations related to their former responsibilities. These officials have been described as part of a bureaucratic mafia because of their tendency to have collusive ties with those they were supposed to supervise or regulate. According to the state-run provider of public information, ARIRANG, 51 out of 153 heads of public organizations, or roughly 1/3, could be categorized as bureaucratic mafia. President Park is expected to carry out a government reshuffle, including hiring a new prime minister after she returns from a 3-day trip from the UAE later this week. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And over in Seoul's National Assembly, lawmakers have opened a plenary session that will attempt to find out just what went wrong in the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Lawmakers from both the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy put Prime Minister Chung Eung-won in the hot seat this Tuesday morning, asking him whether the Coast Guard had taken appropriate measures at the time of the accident. The Prime Minister acknowledged that the Coast Guard had not carried out its full duties and said that further investigations to determine why were currently underway. Now, Chung also said a safety control tower would be set up under the Prime Minister's office to overhaul the nation's safety management system. The Oceans Minister and the Coast Guard Chief are not expected to appear at the plenary session as the government says they are needed at the site of the ferry accident, where search efforts continue for 17 victims who are still unaccounted for. Over in Thailand, martial law has been declared by the army there. Pro and anti-government protesters have been warned in no uncertain terms not to move around Bangkok. The declaration comes after months of unrest and the deepening political crisis in the Southeast Asian country. Our Kwon-soa has this report.
Thailand is under temporary military rule as the army in the early hours of Tuesday morning local time declared nationwide martial law to restore order in the crisis-hit country.
To maintain peace and order and bring back peace into all groups and all sides as soon as possible, I used Law Section 2 and 4 and Martial Law 2457 to announce martial law all over Thailand.
He denied a military coup was underway, only saying the army needs to take charge of public security. General Prayut also urged people to carry on with their business as usual. Thai public television showed images of soldiers outside broadcast stations in Bangkok Tuesday, announcing that all TV stations were being secured by the military. An aide to the interim prime minister was quoted as saying the move had not been relayed to the government beforehand and that it remains to be seen whether the army chief will agree to stay impartial. The aide added this declaration of martial law was half a coup. Thailand's army has staged 11 coups since the end of absolute monarchy in 1932. The last one occurred in 2006. The declaration of martial law comes 2 weeks after Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra was ousted from office, along with 9 cabinet ministers for allegedly abusing their power. Anti-government protesters had wanted Yingluck out for months. The government had scheduled elections for July 20th after earlier polls were cancelled due to mass protests. The next elections are also likely to be boycotted by anti-government protesters who want the remnants of Yingluck's government out and a neutral leader installed. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's foreign ministry is considering issuing a travel warning to Thailand for the safety of Koreans with plans to visit the Southeast Asian country or its nationals there. Now, it's another thorn in the already thorny Sino-U.S. relations. China has denounced and denied U.S. charges that 5 of its army officers hacked into the computers of American companies. Now, this represents a shift in the way the U.S. goes after hackers. Here's our Yoo Ri-an with this story.
China says charges that 5 of its military officers have been engaging in cyber espionage are completely made up. China's foreign ministry on Monday called on the U.S. to immediately withdraw its charges, saying they will only stand to damage U.S.-China relations. In the most immediate sign that they will, Beijing has already said they're suspending the activities of the China-U.S. Cyber Working Group, an initiative agreed on by both countries just 1 month ago. Earlier on Monday, U.S. prosecutors charged 5 Chinese military officers of stealing trade secrets from 5 companies. It's the first time the U.S. has filed such criminal charges against a foreign state.
What I think distinguishes this case is that we have a state-sponsored entity, state-sponsored individuals using intelligence tools to gain commercial advantage. And that is what makes this case different.
The accused officers belong to Unit 61398 of the People's Liberation Army, a unit long believed to be staffed by thousands of Chinese cyber troops. China denies any involvement, which doesn't come as a surprise to experts.
The Chinese have basically 2 responses. One is, we're not spying on you, we don't hack you. And the second one is, in fact, you guys are the biggest hacking empire in the world. We've seen through the Snowden revelations that you are constantly hacking into other countries' networks. You are the big hypocrites, and we are the biggest victims.
The landmark case is expected to pave the way for more indictments down the road, and shows that the U.S. is serious about holding foreign governments accountable for cyber attacks. Washington estimates cyber espionage costs the U.S. economy as much as $100 billion a year. Yoo Ri-an, Arirang News.
Well, despite signs of a recovery, Korea's share in global trade inched down last year for the first time since 1998. Figures released by the Bank of Korea and the Korea International Trade Association show Korea was 9th in combined imports and exports last year among the members of the World Trade Organization. China topped the list, followed by the U.S., Germany, and Japan. Now, back in 1997, Korea ranked 12th, fell 2 notches the following year after a foreign exchange crisis, but had been steadily climbing up the ladder since. Experts attribute the fall to a slump in imports last year, which dipped 0.7% from a year earlier. Now, exports aren't faring so well either in terms of the global share. Korea's share of exports in the global market came in under the 3% range for the 2nd straight year in 2013. Korean companies operating in India are looking at the recent victory of the BJP and its leader Narendra Modi as an opportunity to expand business in the nation of 1.2 billion people. Well, Modi, who is perceived as being market-friendly, has pledged to cut the nation's unemployment rate, and Korean firms will be making their case that they can create new jobs there. POSCO, for one, is set to return for talks regarding the construction of a steel mill, which has been on hold for 9 years due to land acquisition issues and environmental concerns. Samsung Electronics and LG plan to release a range of low-priced smartphones to meet growing demand there. And in a recent survey conducted on 200 Korean companies operating in India, 63% said they believed that business conditions would improve under the new Indian government. A growing number of foreigners are coming to Korea, not for vacation, but for medical treatment, namely plastic surgery. Well, the number of foreign tourists visiting the nation for medical purposes topped the 200,000 mark last year for the first time ever. And this, of course, is according to the health ministry. That's a surge of nearly 33% compared to the previous year. And when they come, they spend money. Foreign patients spent more than $380 million on medical treatment in Korea in 2013. Medical tourists from China topped the list, followed by those from the U.S., Russia, and Japan, respectively.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Gon-young. Every weekday, only on Arirang.
Producer prices in this country dropped for the 19th straight month in April. This on strong local currency, which pulled down raw material prices. The Bank of Korea said Tuesday that producer prices fell at 0.3% last month from a year earlier. Now, the drop was mostly led by prices of industrial goods that were influenced most by the lower raw material prices. However, the prices for service and agricultural products, both of which are closely related to the people's livelihoods, all rose from the previous year. And last month's ferry disaster in Korea has impacted the country in many different ways. In a purely economic sense, the tragedy has caused consumer spending to plunge. The Korea Credit Finance Association said Tuesday that after analyzing card transaction records, spending on clothing, leisure, and beauty products in April, it tumbled compared to the same month last year. The amount spent on leisure activities was actually up at 27% during the first half of April, but tumbled by 31% in the latter half of the month. The Sewol-ho ferry sank on April 16th. Data also shows more Koreans took out insurance policies following the disaster amid growing concerns about safety. Korea will soon begin operating a magnetic levitation train out of the nation's gateway, Incheon International Airport. The hyper-futuristic mode of transportation, like its name suggests, levitates above the track with the help of incredibly powerful magnets. Our Kim Ji-yeon shows us.
Unlike conventional trains, this magnetic levitation train uses a powerful magnetic field to travel along the rails. It has no wheels and suspends itself about 8 millimeters above the tracks. Let's see how it works. The train encases the track in a C shape, and electromagnets are attached on both the top and bottom. When electric current passes through the electromagnets placed underneath the tracks, the train lifts slightly. Now, when current also flows into the electromagnets above the track, the opposite poles of the magnet move into formation and create a push and pull effect, making the train move forward. As it uses a magnetic field to move, the noise created is only about 80% that of subway trains, and it also causes minimal vibration. Even when the Maglev train travels at its maximum speed of 110 kilometers per hour, vibrations can hardly be felt inside. It can also be operated without an engineer, which cuts down operation costs.
There's no friction between the wheels and tracks, so maintenance costs are extremely low.
The train was created using homegrown technology and is being made safer through 2 years of efficiency tests. The braking distance has also been reduced to 100 meters, and the electronic waves the train emits are lower than those of a television.
It uses existing rail and road networks, and because it causes less noise and vibration, it is also eco-friendly.
After commercialization in July, Korea will become the second country in the world after Japan to operate the Maglev train. It will run on a 6-kilometer rail line from Incheon International Airport and will be free of charge for the time being. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And that report was by our Kim Min-ji on the hyper-futuristic train. Now, President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to attend a ceremony in the UAE just about now to celebrate the debut of a Korean-built nuclear reactor there. She and others hope the deal will pave the way for more exports of Korea's nuclear technology, but will it? Our Na Hyun-kyung has this report.
The demand for building nuclear power plants globally has rebounded since Japan's Fukushima disaster in 2011. The World Nuclear Association in an earlier forecast says the market is worth $40 billion a year and will grow at around 3% annually by the year 2030. And officials say President Park making a short 2-day trip to the UAE, despite possible public backlash for diverting her attention away from the sunken ferry disaster, demonstrates the government's determination to bring more of Korea's nuclear technology to the overseas market. But some experts in Seoul say this will be easier said than done. Nuclear engineering professor Seo Kyun-yeol of Seoul National University told Arirang News that while Korea is able to build its own nuclear facilities, its technology independence level is still not up to 100%, as some of the core technologies still rely on foreign expertise and imported components. He also points out that if Korea wishes to win more deals from the international market, it needs the involvement of more than just the state-run Korea Electric Power Corporation, for example, participation from the private sector. That way, it can boost manpower and capital and have a better chance at beating competitors like Areva of France and General Electric of the United States. As for last year's corruption scandals involving nuclear energy officials, local experts say it's imperative that Korea clears its name on the global stage. Once Korea regains trust on top of securing a steady supply chain of uranium requirements, pundits say Korea should have a fair chance at inking more international deals in the future. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
So as our Na Hyun-kyung just reported, President Park Geun-hye is in the UAE today for a ceremony marking the installation of a Korea-built nuclear reactor at a power plant under construction in the Middle Eastern nation. So how big of a deal is this, and what significance does this hold in Korea's nuclear power plant industry? For analysis, our regular contributor, Dr. Kim Yongjoo, joins us live in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
So yesterday, after an emotional address to the nation with an apology on the latest ferry tragedy, President Park took off for the UAE for a brief 40-hour-long trip.
Right.
Why was it so vitally important for her to make this trip?
I think we find enough reasons for this rather, quick departure, right? Immediately following the national address to the people here. As you mentioned, this is, first of all, a very condensed one, 40 hours you mentioned, and 40 hours spanning over about 3 days. And she's actually staying only one night there in United Arab Emirates there. So this is very condensed, densely packed trip. Telling us this is a very important one that she has to deal with here. That is Korea's 1.4 gigawatt nuclear reactor being installed at the United Arab Emirates. This model, APR 1400 model, is a Korea designed and developed one, and this is Korea's first time exporting nuclear reactor to any other foreign country. This nuclear reactor actually got to that location in that country at the end of last month, and it has been sitting there going through actually safety test under the UAE authorities twice, 2 rounds of the safety test, and it's ready to be installed. And this is overall 3-year construction project. And after this installation, this is supposed to end. The overall construction of this whole entire nuclear reactor will be finished by year 2017. Okay. And what's coming is this is not the end of the story. There are 3 other reactors that will be coming, and by the end of the year 2020, all 3. Including this one, altogether 4 nuclear reactors Korea designed and built will be totally operational in United Arab Emirates. So this is a very important beginning for that 4 nuclear reactor projector for Korea. This was won several years ago, and at that time it was heralded as some kind of big celebration under Lee Myung-bak administration. So this is the actual beginning of the actual construction project and construction process. And what's happening is in nuclear reactor business, it's not like a one-time deal. What happens is it takes about, as I mentioned, about somewhere between around like 10 years of construction, and it takes about 60 years of operation, and then 10 years of deconstruction or disassembly. So this is actually one nuclear reactor deal is in general about 80-year-long project.
Wow.
So Korea got this deal, several years ago, and that's the end of the story? Well, it's not. At that time, we got this deal for 4 nuclear reactors. It was a $40 billion. But if you consider the operation period and the dismantling period, the project itself is much, much, much bigger. So it's important for the president to deal with the beginning phase of that.
Right, so the first one ever, I suppose, international debuting of Korean-made nuclear reactors. And future possible deals that Korea is keeping a close eye on include those in Finland, Saudi Arabia, and Vietnam.
Right, exactly. Let's keep in mind, Korea is the 6th country in the world for the first time joining this, like the other 5 players that have exported nuclear reactors. The United States, France, Canada, Russia, Japan, and there comes Korea here. And so 6 player in this field of business of selling nuclear reactors, exporting nuclear reactors overseas. Recently, Korea has tried a big time to make a deal with Turkey, and it didn't work out. But we have other deals, as you mentioned, coming in, possibly with Saudi Arabia and Vietnam. Saudi Arabia, they have a plan to increase their reliance upon nuclear reactors, nuclear power, by 20% by the end of the year 2030. So until then, they have lots of nuclear reactors coming in. So Korea is working hard to sell our design and our product. In Vietnam, they have a plan to build about 1 gigawatt nuclear reactors, 10 of them by the end of 2030. So Korea is working on getting their 5th and 6th one right at this point. First 2, Russia got it. 3rd and 4th, Japan got it, and Korea is working on getting a 5th and 6th. So these are important deals that Korea is keeping its eyes on.
Right, very huge deals in terms of the money involved and whatnot. But we all still remember the Fukushima nuclear meltdown all too vividly. And Japan, of course, is still struggling from the aftermath of that. And the crisis is a reminder to all of those across the globe that nuclear plants, nuclear power is really a danger if not maintained properly in times of crisis. Now, so considering the post-Fukushima sentiment, I mean, is it even possible for Korea to promote itself as a nuclear power plant facility exporter?
Well, I'm an optimist on nuclear issues here. Maybe I may be biased, but Japan and Germany, they dropped their plan to continue on with the nuclear power generation. But we know the signs of regrets in those both countries about that decision after the Fukushima disaster. Abe is already working on actually restarting their nuclear reactors, indeed. And in Germany, we hear voices about regrets about that quick decision. What we have to keep in mind in looking at the nuclear issues, my own perspective is that this is a technology area, and technology progresses all the time. At the beginning of the century, airplane travel was a dangerous one, but the picture has changed. So I believe the technology will continue to progress, and in the meantime, what we in Korea have to do is keep our bets on nuclear power generation together with other means of power generation. So never drop your bet on one thing because future is always unclear. And by the way, technology continues to progress.
All right, well, we should be keeping our fingers crossed on the nuclear deals to come for Korea, and hopefully that nuclear energy will be managed in a very safe manner so that no kind of meltdown like the one in Fukushima ever happens again.
Exactly, and hopefully we'll get to do it even better, technically speaking.
Definitely so. All right, Dr. Kim Yongjoo, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And that's your business today on this Tuesday. Thank you for watching, and do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.